Hey, Tim.
Hey, Cleve. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so we're recording the meeting.
Yes. Yeah. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
What the intent is, what they'll do is they'll take these videos and edit them and put them together, like you and Mark Spencer and et cetera, myself, Rashid Ali, and various other people, and they'll share this with the students. And the hope is to inspire them or get them interested in careers in aviation, manufacturing operations, supply chain, that kind of thing. Lean.
So yeah, I guess my only is I didn't realize that this was the actual session. I thought we were going to talk about whatever it was that they needed. Uh, you
Well,
know,
is it okay to do it now?
I well, I guess I don't know.
Well, it's not hard. It's not something that you have to spend a lot of time getting ready for.
Okay.
But it's basically, just talking a little bit about your journey um again, since we're just starting the session, I'm Tim Engel. Used to work at Boeing Aerospace. Worked in various different organizations and capacities, and I will turn it over to you, Cleve, because you're kind of the focus. If you want to introduce yourself and then uh, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is Cleave Law, and let's see. I worked at Boeing for a very long time. Well, McDonnell Douglas and then Boeing for 30 some odd years. I can't even remember exactly how many. Been retired for coming up to 7 years, which is kind of amazing too. Worked in engineering in a lean organization. That means anything to you, the word lean. uh, Worked mostly on the C-17 program and finished my career working in a lean organization at the corporate level.
Yeah, super. That's great. Good intro. Yeah, again, the idea is to share this information about various people with the students. They want to go with Chapman University initially, but the thinking is we can use it at other universities as well.
Mhm.
A lot of the kids coming up in college today, they think that the greatest career would be working for a IT company, Google or some sort of social media platform. And we want to get them interested in working in manufacturing operations, supply chain, that kind of thing.
Right.
So, Cleve, I got a series of questions to ask you, and nothing's hard, nothing's tough, but if you could go back to the beginning and talk a little bit about how did you decide on a career in aerospace, and how what got you started with McDonnell Douglas? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, from an unusually early age, I probably in what we call junior high school back in the day, I guess middle school these days, I decided I wanted to be an engineer. And um, that and at the time I was mostly interested in automotive, but also had a very long-lived passion for aircraft in general. I was really into airplanes and space. Um, you can look this up on Google, but I was born about a month before uh, the Russians launched the first Sputnik. So I was born right at the beginning of the space race, as they used to call it.
Yeah.
And so that was just a big part of my life growing up. And then after college, I actually had an opportunity to to work for Fram Automotive, Grumman, which is now Northrop Grumman, or McDonnell Douglas, which is part of now, Boeing. But I decided on McDonnell Douglas, and didn't think that I would necessarily work there my whole life. I did have a little sabbatical partway through my career. Um, that was a self-decided sabbatical, and then after just under 2 years, I was back in aerospace and stayed there, like I said, for gosh, I can never remember exactly. Let's just say over 35 years in aerospace. So that's, from being in like the 8th grade all the way through my retirement. I was interested in airplanes and things like that.
Yeah, that's super. That's super. So, we understand your interest in engineering and getting into McDonnell Douglas. Can you share with us how you prepared for your career? Like what schooling or reading or learning that you did to prepare you?
So yeah, I mean, again, since I had kind of felt like I wanted to be an engineer early on, I was always focusing on, the math and science courses. Took calculus in high school. Physics, actually really my favorite course in high school was physics. And then and early on, I had an interest in computers. And I mean, I could describe what the computers were like back in those days, but you wouldn't believe it. And there were no screens. It was a roll of paper and a teletype machine, and you would type programs in and store them on paper tape. There were no discs. So between the math and science and just this interest in computers, I was able to apply to and get accepted into a couple of different schools that focused on engineering. And so I went to college and got a 4-year degree in mechanical engineering, and that paved the way for the 3 job offers that I mentioned. I mean, back in those days, this is now 1979, it was actually a shortage of engineering students. And I remember McDonnell Douglas that summer of 1979, when I graduated, they hired something like 500 engineers. And I'm talking about the Long Beach, Douglas Aircraft facility. I mean, it was almost like when we came in that summer, all of these new hire engineers, it was almost like another college class, if you will.
Yes.
So we kind of, we knew each other, and we're all kind of getting started in our careers at the same time. But that's really, I've prepared myself, and then as my career progressed, I did end up getting a master's that McDonnell Douglas paid for in engineering management. And I was in management for a number of years, and then got out of management for various reasons. But anyway, and I was doing engineering either as an engineer or as an engineering manager through about the year 2000. I think, yeah, a little after the year 2000, I moved into doing lean full time.
So when you made that transition into lean, what did you see in that interested you, and how did you make that transition?
Well, so in the 1990s, we had a lot of turmoil on the C-17 program, and there's a book that was written about it. I can't remember the title of it now, but as part of that turmoil with the program, we got into really looking at how what the processes were for designing and building the aircraft, as well as what were the ways that we managed those processes. And really, it was a series of circumstances that while I was still an engineering manager, it was kind of like nobody else wanted to do it. Wanted to be the owner of processes, and I just had an interest in it. And part of it came out of getting my master's in engineering management in the early 90s. So I owned some of the engineering processes. Not that I really knew what that was, but I was very interested in the processes and how we could design things better. And then, like I said, it was just a whole series of circumstances. We started looking at how we could do more concurrent development in engineering. And I ended up leading a project. I don't even know if the room we called the center, and it was a concurrent development environment. And from there, somebody said, "Oh, that's like lean." And I had no idea what lean was at the time. They said, there's this lean aerospace initiative, and you should go to the next conference. It's coming up in a month. Next thing I knew, I'm at this conference, and at the time, the head of engineering said, "I'm going to make you the head of lean engineering." Whatever, I guess. You're going to be, actually, I was the head. There was no organization, but you're our focal point. You're going to tell us what all this lean stuff is. And so I just started learning about it. It interested me a lot. A lot of these books behind me are books that I just bought on my own and started reading about lean, and of course meeting other people that were doing the subject. And next thing I knew, I was teaching lean classes and facilitating lean events. Yeah, there were some certifications and things like that that were being developed within
You still there, Cleve?
Boeing people.
Right. So for people that may not have heard of lean, can you give a brief description of what lean's all about?
Well, mechanically and philosophically, I mean, people see it very mechanically, and it being about managing processes and improving processes. And it is. I mean, that's kind of sort of the outcome of it. But philosophically, it's really about involving the people who do the work in terms of defining how the work gets done and improving how the work gets done. And what I really learned after doing it for a couple of decades, or almost 2 decades, not quite, but was really the main thrust of lean thinking as developed primarily at Toyota was respect for people. And that was really kind of the key thing, because if you respect the people doing the work and have them use their knowledge and skills to design and improve the work, you're going to get better outcomes. And there is no ultimate process, if you will, for doing work. It's something that you're always looking at. How can I do it a little better? But always going back to the people who are doing the work to have them determine how to do it better versus telling them how to do it better.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's kind of my understanding too. You were probably a lot more eloquent in the way you defined it. I got involved on the C-17 program as well, and I was for operations. I was the focal for continuous improvement, but one of the keys to that was employee involvement, EI, which is what you said, and respect for the people. That's so important. Yeah, that's and you know it's exciting. It's like a synergy comes when you start collaborating and you bring people, ask people for their ideas. It's exciting because things will change. They will get better. You know, if you have people helping to define and to come up with ideas to improve their work.
Yeah, and I think that in terms of doing this, and it it can apply in any field. Interestingly, lean in healthcare is really a big thing these days. But because I do try to continue to follow what's going on in the field, but whether you're designing some software platform or app, the process that you use to do that can be made better through lean. But really, where the rubber meets the road, to use that old phrase, is when you're building things. I think that's where lean really shines, is when you're building. And I think that's partly why it's so important in healthcare, because you're doing things that affect people versus mechanical things like an airplane. But there's a lot of analogy between those two things, helping people be healthy and helping build products, whether it's an airplane or a car or a building or a bridge in Baltimore. We can do these things better with better quality. By the way, that's the other focus is quality. Besides respect for people, it's how do we do this? How do we build things with the minimum number of defects possible? Again, one of the ideas of lean is you're striving for perfection, but you're continually doing things better. And with the it's striving for perfection kind of implies you can never reach perfection, and that's really kind of true. I mean, you're never going to have zero problems, but if you can get really close to zero, that's what's important.
Yeah, you spoke earlier about automotive, interest in cars and so forth. And it reminds me of, and the quality issue reminds me of is it the J.D. Powers rating for least defects on a new car that's delivered or something like that? And yeah, it's very interesting. What a feather in your hat if you can be up on top of that list, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, any of these consumer-facing organizations that rate any product, I mean, whether you're talking about a phone or anything that gets built, and at the same time, the user experience, like with this application we're using to have this meeting, you don't want it having a lot of bugs when people are using it and need it for doing work. But of course, when we think of quality, we think of things that we can hold in our hands and how well they work and how long they last and things like that. So yes,
absolutely. So we talked a little bit about your career there and some of the transitions you went through. Let's see, lessons learned along the way. Is there anything you'd like to share about that, like lessons learned?
It was a constant learning experience.
Yes, it's kind of a
But,
survival, really. It's a
well,
day-to-day
it
survival
is,
sometimes.
and you if you are not humble, you learn that you need to be humble, because
Yes.
uh, so just as an example, in a workshop, people would say, look, why don't you just tell us what you want us to do? And I don't know if I was exuding that or not, but I really, had to learn that I shouldn't stand there sounding like I'm the expert. All I'm doing is helping people understand the techniques and the practices that they can use to improve their work. So really, you don't want to sound like I know all the answers. You don't. I mean, I could look at a process and say, oh, I think it could be better if you did this or this, but I don't really know. I don't do that work. Um, the people that do it really know how to really have the knowledge and the skills to make it better. They just need the tools to make, to understand how to apply their ideas to do the work and to do the work better. So that's where my expertise was, in those tools, to help them be able to do their jobs better, but not the actual, this is what you do to do better. So that was, a big lesson learned as we're teaching classes and doing workshops where we would actually work on processes.
Yeah,
So
that's great.
yeah.
Cleve, what about what you consider achievements and highlights in your career? Can you talk a little bit about those? And it's okay to share some successes and highlights.
Well, it's kind of funny. I mean, the thing. Let me work my way to good things. The thing that
Okay.
disappoints me the most is really how what I was doing, the people I was doing it with, and I've been in touch with some of them over the years since I've retired, is how it's still just a struggle to apply these concepts, and really, again, at the pinnacle, the idea of respect for people, where you hear that people just are, under schedule pressure, or the boss says this is how we're doing it, and that's how it gets done. That we haven't progressed further with that idea of respect for people and letting the people improve their own work. Because we did some amazing things on the C-17 program, I think, and it was all a combination of circumstances. It wasn't like somebody said in 1990, when the program was in really bad shape, this is the path to success, right? It was just a whole bunch of things came together, Malcolm Baldrige, things like that.
Yes.
And circumstances that we ended up, I think, having a program that I wish Boeing understood what was there, and I'm not talking about the product. I'm talking about the environment, the atmosphere, the leadership ideas. So that's something that pains me a little bit still to this, when I hear what's happening and talk to people. But in terms of successes, every time I see the C-17, it just warms my heart. Every time I see it flying, see it in the news, doing good things,
Yes.
and then I see little videos of the cargo system, and that's really, in terms of things that I did as an engineer. I actually designed a lot of components. Well, I shouldn't say a lot, a number of components in the cargo system, but I laid out. I was responsible at the time for laying out everything in the cargo system, where the rails were, where the locks were, all the rollers, and and things like that. And so
Wow.
when I see the airplane filled up with palletized cargo, or with, you know, a Humvee on a pallet and it gets yanked out by a parachute, but and the very first parachute that gets thrown out of the airplane is called a drogue chute. Really, there's 3 parachutes in an airdrop. When you see these things like in movies, I think Transformers and James Bond and things like that.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a drogue chute, which is the first chute that's out there that ends up pulling out what they call the extraction chutes, which are the chutes that develop the big force to yank the thing out of the airplane. And then the third set of parachutes are the recovery chutes. And I know this is really nerdy at this point, but
Oh, that's okay.
and those are the parachutes that let the thing come down and land on the ground and not get destroyed. But I actually designed the drogue chute deployment mechanism, and it was very unique in cargo aircraft at the time. They used to use modified bomb racks that were on the center line of the airplane, and the loadmaster had to use a ladder and climb up to load the drogue chute. And there was only one drogue chute, and if it didn't work, it scrubbed the mission. We designed 2 deployment mechanisms on either side of the airplane that you could just walk up to and load the chute into. And I designed that. And so every time I see an airdrop, I think about the fact that, yep, they used that thing that I designed.
Fantastic. Yeah, the use of the C-17 in the movies, just a video of them using the aircraft is incredible. But you see it in the movies, it's exciting. You know, you're sitting there watching a movie, and all of a sudden, there's our baby, right?
Right, exactly. So,
Oh, did you work with Bob Bechtel?
yes.
I was still working with Bob Bechtel up until just a couple months ago when I retired. Bob, who's been around quite a while, still working, and he's still the focal for the cargo system. And what a gentleman he is. You must have passed on a lot of good wisdom, and he was just so great to work with. He's a good guy.
Yeah. I worked with him for a lot of years on cargo system. Great guy. I like Bob a lot. Yes. And if you happen to see him, send my regards.
Absolutely. Now you moved into Lean, and we heard a little bit about that. If you don't mind, I wanted to ask you about your home. Is that something you'd be willing to share a little bit about? Your beautiful eco-friendly home? I was able to share, because you shared, I was able to see the process somewhat. But can you share a little bit about that, and where that started, and how you got that vision, and how you got through it? Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. And it was a big lesson in being humble, by the way, building this house.
I can imagine.
But again, I'm kind of a child of my times. I was in junior high school for the first Earth Day, and for whatever reason, the idea of Earth Day really stuck with me. Also, fortunately, it stuck with my wife. And so we've been very environmentally conscious throughout our coming up to 34 years of marriage.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. The way that we, live and do things. Just yesterday, literally, we were talking about, okay, Long Beach seems to have changed what they're allowing to be recycled again. And so, okay, can I recycle this plastic shampoo bottle? And we're looking at the thing, and yeah, we can. So that was just a discussion yesterday. That's just how we live. We had a dream to build a house after our kids were, through college and gone. And so we did. little did we know at the time. I mean, at the time we thought we would go somewhere else, but we ended up building a house next door to where we lived for over 25 years. Uh,
Wow.
but it's our forever home. And it was designed from the get-go, from through its entire life cycle. Again, that may be a term that the folks are or are not familiar with, but from cradle to grave, as they say, we did a lot of things that we hope are environmentally responsible. As an example, most of the structure of the house is steel, but and they're prefab walls with steel and expanded polystyrene or styrofoam insulation. And both the steel and the insulation are 30% recycled material by content. So that's just an example of, right from, the basic building blocks. And I could go on about all of the things, but, our idea was to make this as green as possible during the, I'll use that term, during the construction, because doing prefab walls of any kind, whether they're made of steel or other materials, minimizes construction waste by having walls being built in a factory versus on site. Our first floor is polished concrete because that's less materials in terms of used to build the house. Our second floor is all reclaimed maple flooring. We don't know where it came from exactly, but we sourced it locally out of Torrance, and the maple material was found in some place in California. So those were the kinds of things we were doing while we were building. Our countertops, our quartz countertops, we got from the only company that makes them in the United States. So that kind of thinking. But then in terms of the house itself, it's very well insulated. It's all electric, no gas. We have solar panels and we have whole house batteries. The 3 years that we've had the entire system up and running, we've had each year it's roughly 250 days a year we do not pull any electricity from the grid. And that includes running the house, and the batteries allow us to use excess solar power from the day, use it to get through the night. But we also have a battery electric vehicle, and 99% of the electricity that vehicle uses is from our solar panels.
Wow.
I'm sorry, take that back. In those 250 days, that includes charging our car during that time period.
Wow. That's amazing.
And then our other car is a plug-in hybrid, so we mostly drive that one on electricity. So that's also charging that vehicle. So we're pretty we're not totally self-sufficient, but 2/3 of the time we don't need to use any electricity from the grid, which our feeling is it reduces the need and stress on the grid, but the need to build more power plant. If everybody did it, I mean, one house isn't going to make a difference, but and the whole idea of this house, by the way, was an experiment. We could afford it, if you will, and we said we don't know for sure. And the people, our architect, even though he designs LEED houses, he didn't really know how all of these different ideas that we were doing would work. But we said, let's just go for it. And we did. And, so we've had some successes, as I've said, with electricity and not relying on the grid. a lot of our water usage is super low, and that has to do with low flow things, as well as all our I shouldn't say all, but most of our irrigation is stored rainwater. We have rain barrels. We also have a rain garden, so that water doesn't run off our property down the street and into the sewer. We graded the lot so water stays on the property, and the rain garden is basically a big pit that's filled in with sand and gravel that allows rainwater that's coming off of the roof to percolate down and replenish the aquifer. And so you can see, like in the rain that we just had yesterday, you can look at our property. You can see how all the water is just staying on the property, or going into our rain barrels.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah, and your home is it's beautiful. Of course, on Facebook you have a picture of your home, and I show people, and they just say, "Wow, it's beautiful." I said, "Yeah," and it had a lot of thought and love went into getting that thing together. And I didn't know some of the details that you just shared with us.
So one of the things in terms of learning another lesson in humility, I was a project manager also on the C-17 program for a number of years, and I thought, okay, well, I retired while we were building the house. And I thought, okay, well, I've managed multi-million-dollar projects on the C-17 program. Managing the construction of a house should be a piece of cake. It wasn't. We were over budget and we were late.
Yeah. It's bound to happen, right?
I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a key takeaway from your chat, Cleve, is humility. I remember there were times in my career that I thought I was doing pretty well. I'd gotten promoted, or I'd gotten moved to a different program, and I thought, well, here I am. I have arrived. And one of my bosses, he called me over to his office. He says, "Sit down," and he goes, "I want to talk to you." He goes, "You're down on the shop floor now of the C-17, and he says, I want to tell you two things. Stay hungry, which is good. We all want to stay hungry, which means we're looking for the next thing and next improvement. But he says you need to stay humble too." And he was so right. There were times where I thought I was right and I was righteous, and I was fighting with a brother or sister in the back line. Here I was in final assembly, and those guys in the center section, they were really beating us. They were horrible, and we'd have these battles going, and what I found out was, as you said, respect for the people. Sit down with them, talk with them. What's going on? What's happening? And it gets back to that we all have pressures. We have schedule pressure. We have budget pressure. We have our supervision are pushing us to do something a certain way. And so it always pays to sit down with people and get their viewpoint, and I respect what you said there. I think that's very valuable. Cleve, we're probably down to our last few minutes. Do you have any advice for college students and or early career folks that you want to pass on?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I really just want to emphasize the idea that everything we do is a process, and we can do it better. And if you get into a position of leadership, which is important, just always remember that, we used to say this on the C-17 program, and some people thought it was lip service, but I really believe it's part of some of the truths of doing well in business. Is your most valuable resource are the people doing the work.
Yes.
It's not your shareholders. Your customers are